I'm so excited for so many other parents that their children graduated. My daughter grew up with a lot of them, so they're kind of like, they're all my kids too. So I'm excited and happy for them. And one of the things that I'd like to also say, recognize for this year, you know, some of the things that we have done this year, some of the positive things, like looking back and I'm like, those are positive things that we should reflect on. And I'm so excited about next year and the things that we're going to do next year. So I'm just excited. We had a good year and looking forward to more good years. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, other than the end of the year events, I just got back from vacation late last night, so I'm having a re-entry problem. So if I'm not quite with it, like, give me a
no excuses.
Okay, Superintendent's report, Dr. Anderson.
Yes, I just came back this afternoon from the Arizona School Administrators Conference in Tucson and really had a great opportunity for some learning. Attended some sessions on managing your time as a superintendent and what are some tools that we can use with working with our administrative assistants on how do you make sure that you get time to spend in schools, talking with teachers, being out in the community. So I'm looking forward to taking some of those tools and implementing them into my day-to-day work. Also some really great keynote speakers. You know, we had a gentleman who talked about teamwork and he actually works with the Olympic team, the Olympic skiing team, and you know, how do you take these group of individuals that have these talents and to be able to pull them together with this collective vision that yes, they may be competing individually, but each one of them makes each other better, and how do they motivate each other, and how do they bring that together so that when one is struggling, how do you help pick them up? And so it was really a great learning experience, and I look forward to attending some more of those in the future. Also, when we talk about our celebrations over the last couple of weeks and throughout the year, our high school graduates had over $1.5 million worth of scholarships awarded to them. So it's absolutely incredible that our students are doing well academically, and it's showing through their ASU scholarships, Grand Canyon. We also had some scholarships to some private universities across the nation. So very proud of our students, and we hope to see that number continue to grow. Also, I talked a little bit about our certified and classified retention numbers. We have a little bit clearer data on that right now. We have, last year our certified staff was about 67% of our certified staff returned for this year. Our numbers are sitting at 81% right now, so a really nice jump there. And then our classified staff is at 88%. However, those numbers don't include transportation and food service. I did go to the end of the year food service. They have about 30 employees. They only had 3 that were leaving. So we know that that number is probably in the 90s. And then transportation, I know that Lori Joris had told us that she was looking for 6 or 7 bus drivers. And so the nice thing there was, because of what we did with our salaries, she said that for the 6-7 employees that she was hiring, they actually had a pool of 16 applicants, which was something that they had not experienced before, and that when they interviewed somebody and they thought it wasn't a good fit, they could say no. And that was the celebration to them, is making sure that we get the right people in the positions and to be able to do the work. And so we're excited about that. And then the other last celebration I will share is our salaries have been about $5,000 to $7,000 from our neighboring districts. We had some word that some of our neighboring districts were going to hit that $46,000 mark this year. They didn't quite hit it, and so we're looking about that $5,000 mark as being kind of the highest. And so I'm excited to see that that gap between us and some of our neighboring districts has actually decreased walking into next year. So I'm very pleased about that, and hope that we can continue that momentum. And this is one just informational piece. Peralta Trail had a little bit of exciting, interesting things happen about 4 hours ago. As I was driving back from Tucson, I get a call from Ms. Clement, the principal of Peralta Trail, that the Southwest States Incident Management stopped at their site, and that we are going to actually be that school will be the incident management headquarters for the next week or two while they continue to fight that fire. And it will be approximately 400 to 500 individuals that will be housed on that site with their public relations administration, as well as fire. They're going to put some tents out in the playground so that the firefighters have some places to rest and eat. And so as soon as we get a little bit more information, we'll get that out to the rest of the community. But we just learned about it within the last few hours. So if you hear anything, please let them know that no, we are not evacuating the community. They're all okay. This is just for the firefighters to have a home base to help fight that fire. So that's it.
Okay, we're at public comments. We have a couple public comments, and so I'll read a statement. There's a couple of them that are on specific agenda items, so Ms. Loftus and Ms. Sims, do you want to make your public comment now or at the agenda item?
At the agenda item.
Okay, so then we have one now, and then we'll do the other ones at that time. So the public is invited to address the governing board on any issue within its jurisdiction, subject to reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions. Governing board members are not permitted to discuss or take legal action on matters raised during open call to the public unless the matters are properly noticed for discussion and legal action. However, the law permits governing board members to do the following at the conclusion of the call to the public: respond to criticism made by those who have addressed the board, ask staff to review a matter, or ask that a matter be put on a future agenda. Members of the public will be provided up to 3 minutes to speak. So we have Brenda Kenzie, I apologize.
That's okay, just come first board meeting. Do I just?
Yeah, if you want to come up to the lectern.
My name is Brenda Kinsey, and I came because I wanted to talk about, and maybe I should wait to the agenda items, but I've never done this before, so I don't really know how this all works, about the recommendation for the bond proposal. Because I've gone through it and I have some concerns, and that I think to get my support would have to be resolved. My biggest concern, and I'm trying to highlight because my prepared statement is way longer than 3 minutes, so is that a lot of the things that are highlighted in here that needs to be done are valid, but they are things that are currently covered by the School Facilities Board, which is a state agency that receives funding specifically because by law they are supposed to take care. I'll quote what the School Facilities Board said. The student's first law established a building renewal fund for the purpose of maintaining adequacy of existing school facilities. These monies can be used for major renovations and repairs for the building and upgrades that will extend the useful life of the building or for infrastructure cost. And when I contacted them, they said they had 76 million of projects that were granted this last school year, and the approval rate was 100%. And that their next school year is going to be an 80 million budget. So, quote, there's plenty of money. So while there's plenty of money in that source already, the school bond is, proposing that they tax us to cover things that are already covered by the School Facilities Board. So I would think that the school district should take note of that, and before they come and ask taxpayers for more money, that they make applications to the School Facilities Board to get the money for such things as HVAC, roofing, and lighting that can be fully funded by them, and maybe some of the other general projects as well that are listed. So that's my main concern. My other concern is there's some other items listed in here that were supposed to be covered by the 2020 budget that just passed, such as additional SROs, the safety resource officers. According to the news, there was supposed to be funding given to all schools that already had a wait list for that. There was also supposed to be school funding coming for school counselors, and these are all things that are listed in here that was for the bond. And some other things seem excessive to me, such as the amount of contingency and whatever it was called, like unexpected cost. And the other thing that was very concerning was that one of the objectives of this proposal was to plan for future growth and development of the district. Well, I have the numbers to show that the district has been in decline for over 10 years, and even when homes were built in like Uncharted El Oro and Jacobs Ranch, the enrollment still went down. So I think for me to buy into a bond and agree to increase my taxes, I want to know the school is adequately planning for a realistic ADM number and not for some growth that is likely not going to happen. And the last part that concerns me is that the bond proposal does have a committee to oversee all the expenditures as a way to control the cost, but there was no plan to make it more transparent to taxpayers. I think as taxpayers, if you're going to tax us, I want to know exactly, if you're spending $9 million for technology, which is a whole lot of money, I want to know exactly what you're buying. So I think it should go on the website. But anyway,
Thank you.
that's all.
So Madam President,
I apologize.
Go ahead.
You were already
I
there.
was just going to request that if Dr. Anderson would like to follow up with Ms. Kinsey on some of those concerns, especially like the school facilities board and the other funding items.
I actually had a question, if I can ask the superintendent, in regards to the amount of funding that, if the board were to approve going out for each of these, the amount of funding that is requested, and I'm not sure how to word this, with, I also had a lot of questions about an oversight committee. With the specific amounts, those were estimates that we had, we had contractors come in and there were estimates. So none of that is like hard-lined, and we could easily, and correct me if I'm wrong, we could easily have things repaired that are far less than that. So one of the questions that I've had from the community is, what happens, say, you don't necessarily have to spend all the money, but what happens to the money that's not spent?
And that would be a great question, and I would pass that on to.
So when we
get
to that
item, then I would ask that Brian Lundberg responds to that question about issuing bonds or not issuing bonds. But to answer about the school facilities board, we've been collecting that information, and so we'll be able to get that out very quickly on what we have already requested from SFB and how that partnership has been for the last 10, I think we've gone back 10 years of our funding that we've received from SFB. So.
Okay, so we're at to item 3, the consent agenda. So Ms. Loftus had a public comment for the consent agenda.
It's broken? I'm worried I'm gonna break it worse.
Just talk about it.
I'll just talk about it.
You're outside.
Close.
I just wanted to, I believe that my request to be let out of my contract is a part of agenda item 3, and I just wanted to make sure and speak publicly in regards, and I apologize if I cry. Apache Junction is my home. This is where I live. This is where I've raised my kids. I have enjoyed working for Apache Junction Unified School District. I will continue to support Apache Junction Unified School District. I will work to be a part of the override. I will still come out and run. I run for AJ Athletics. So I just want to make sure that it is publicly known, because I feel like oftentimes lots of assumptions are made about why people might leave a place that they work. And it's not ill will, it's not because I'm unhappy, it's because of opportunity, and opportunity for growth, that I'll be quite honest, that I hope someday that I will be able to come back to Apache Junction and help to develop and grow here and other people here within our own school district and in our own community. So I just want to make sure that it's known clearly and publicly that this is not in malice or ill will, and I wish nothing but the best for AJUSD and the community of Apache Junction. This is my home. This is where I belong and want to continue to belong. So I thank you so much for allowing me to serve in this fashion in our community for this many years. 23, that's crazy. So, but again, I just wanted to make sure that that was known. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good luck to you.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon.
Okay, with the consent agenda, would somebody like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So, Madam President, I did have a couple of questions for 3.5 and 3.7, if we can hold that, real quick questions.
Okay, so then we would need to amend the agenda to remove those items from the consent agenda. So are you 3.5 and 3.7? So those items would need to be removed from the consent agenda and added to the end of the action items.
Okay, so Madam President, I would move to pull 3.5 and 3.7 off the consent for discussion and accept the rest of the consent agenda as presented.
We have a motion, do we have a second? Ms. Garcia?
Yes.
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Ms. Rizzi?
Yes.
Ms. Kimball?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that motion passes with a vote of 5-0. So move on to information and discussion items. Item 4.1 is the budget proposal for the 2019 and 2020 fiscal year. Ms. Reichert?
Yeah, things we're going to have the screen come down. So, you may want to have you go down here for a bit.
Looking at the screen on and off.
Wherever you like.
I'm turning them on and off too. Nope, that one, is that better? Okay. Welcome to the 2019-2020 budget proposal. Years just keep on rolling by so quickly, and here we are for another new one. We were just here to revise the other expenditure budget, and here we are here to propose the new one. So, there again, this is the big budget document that was uploaded, and this contains every fund that the district has and the budgets for each one of the funds. So I'm going to go through a summary here because I think that explains things a little bit better than going through each one of these pages. But if you have any questions as we go through this, why, please just let me know. All right, so we start out with the funding that we had. So this is the funding that we received. We received a 2% increase in the base level inflationary funding. We received additional base level funding for teacher salary increases. This is kind of a funny way to put it, but there was a decrease in the district additional assistance reductions. So for many years, we were operating on 15% of what the formula was actually generating. But the last 2 years, we've been able to recoup some of that because they have reduced their reductions. And so for the 2020 or 1920 budget year, the reduction is about 31% versus 65% last year and 85% many years previous to that. The DAA funding allocation, then you can see where the formula generated 1.6. The reduction was almost 500,000, and that left the DAA funding allocation at about 1.1 million. And we also received state additional funding from the Prop 301, or 123, which was given to us, we started a couple of years ago. So that equates to about $151,000. Inherent in this budget year is a classification and compensation study, the results of that. We went into that study with an outside firm, and they conducted it because we were trying to reevaluate classified and certified and administrative salaries to see where we are and to be able to become more comparable with our surrounding neighbors, because it's no news to anybody that we pay less than our neighbors, and we've lost a lot of certified, classified, and administrative personnel because of that. So the study was arranged to be able to compare those salaries and see where we actually stand so that we could become more comparable. And the outcome of that study, one of the outcomes of it, was that our base level for teachers it rose up to $39,345. It was $37,000 last year. So that's about an increase of $2,345 on the base level over last year. So this all came out of this compensation study. You know, we continue to be lower than our surrounding districts, although we are beginning to creep up. We're trying to creep up. And I think this raise in the base level for our teachers is definitely shows that we are beginning to make some strides. The retention levels, you know, that we're seeing for this current, or for the new year coming, are just really very, very positive from previous years, because we've got a retention level at about 81% for our certified staff and 88% for our classified staff. That is so much better than we've had in previous years. And I think it's because we are able to finally be, you know, raising salaries and making things better for our employees, making it more attractive for employees to come here. That's the purpose of all of this. So, we also did the Smart Schools Phase Retirement Plan. I don't know, Edna, are we going to be able, there you go, thank you. And this has to do, we've explained this in previous board meetings about our Smart Schools employees. They leave us and they go to Smart Schools, they're there for 1 year, and then they come back to us and they, as retirees, as ASRS, Arizona State Retirement retirees. When we bring them back into the district, we don't bring them back at 100% for most of them. In previous years, they were brought back at about 76%. We were able to accomplish bringing them up to 80% in the 18-19 school year, and now we're bringing them up to the 85% level in the 19-20 year. The new employees or new hired retirees are going to come into the district that are not Smart Schools employees are coming in at 90%. So you're saying, well, why are you only paying them 90%? And that's because in previous years, way back many years, when a retired employee came back to a district, the district did not have to pay retirement on them. Because the retiree wasn't assessed retirement, and so the district didn't have to. Well, that changed, and the retirement system said, no, we need to have districts contribute for the retirees, because that puts more money into the retirement pot, which I guess made sense. So basically, the difference there is about 10%. So when we hire a retired employee into the district from ASRS, we bring them in at 90%. That takes care of that 10% ACR charge to the district. All right, so then this talks about the ASRS contribution level. It went up a little bit. It's going to go up a little bit in 1920. Not a whole lot, but some. And then also the ACR, the alternative contribution rate for retirees, actually is decreasing for the first time in many years. It's reducing a little bit. Current year funding. You know, current year funding is probably not our favorite subject. It's not our favorite thing to do, but we have to do it. So we're in the third year of doing that. With current year funding, you have to project what your ADM is going to be for the next year. And so we look historically at what it's been in the past, and we predict what it's probably going to be in the ensuing year. And so we have proposed this budget on a projected 4% decline in ADM. We did that last year, and we did that the prior year. We've stayed pretty much within those realms, so that's a pretty good idea. Now, do we want to be able to say next year, no, we don't have to do that because we've got an increase in ADM? You bet. And so we're hoping that we're going to get the children into the district to be able to do that. The side fund, classroom side fund allocation increased this year from 423 to 434 per weighted student count. So that means that, you know, we get more money into that particular fund. Now, the classroom side funds, of course, is for teachers. That money has to be spent on teachers' salaries. So we've been doing that, and over the years we've been able to actually build up a pretty good balance in some of the accounts. So for this year, we are allocating more from each of those buckets to be able to help pay for teachers' salaries. And you can see that the Fund 011 increased to about $2,000 per teacher, and Fund 013 is $5,300. And now the certified staff who are eligible for performance pay This year, we're eligible to receive about $3,900. Next year, it's going to increase to about $4,200. They're eligible to earn up to that. Okay. All right, so we will move on to the contracted employee costs. Now, we have been addressing this. We've addressed it all at this current school year because we are experiencing extremely high costs for contracted employees. Reason being is because employees such as occupational therapists, physical therapists, speech therapists are hard to get, and we haven't been able to actually bring them into the district because they are contracting with other companies, and they, quite frankly, make more than what we can pay. So a new salary schedule for special ed personnel has been proposed, and it will help us with this because they are going on a different salary schedule, and so with the increase there, we think that we can actually lure more special ed people into the district because, quite frankly, it's much cheaper for us to have an employee as a district employee than it is to pay another company for a contracted employee. Plus, they buy into the district. They feel like they're part of the district, whereas sometimes the contracted employees don't. They don't really buy into the kids or anything. I'm not saying all of them do, because some of them do relate very well. But, it's kind of like anything when you contract out. They don't buy in. They don't have that as much as they would if they were our employees. So the new salary schedule is going to help out a whole lot, but it's going to take us a while to reap the benefits from that. And so we'll just continue with that. And as we've said for many, many years, well, I don't know, for probably 10 years or so, or even more than that, special education funding from the state just does not meet the cost of educating a special education student. And I gave you an example here, our EDP program, emotionally disabled program. It generates in funding about $500,000, but the actual cost that we're projecting is going to be $700,000. That's just one special ed category. They are all terribly underfunded. I just wanted to give you an example of what we're facing with these special education costs.
About 45 students too.
Mm-hmm. So then, and I noted this as in the revised budget that we did for 18-19. We are continuing to exceed the budget capacity, and last year, we exceeded it by about $585,000. So we don't know what it's really going to be this year, but we need to prepare for that. We don't want to be hit with that again at the end of the year. So in order to do that, to support that move, we are moving $500,000 of the DAA allocation into the M&O, just in case we do have to pay for those costs, because we honestly don't have any other place to take it. We took the $585,000 out of the MIPS fund. The MIPS fund, Medicaid in Public Schools, does have a balance in it after the 18-19 budget is concerned, because we're going to have to pay for the $585,000 out of that fund. It's going to be, really reduced. Now, we do actually get in about $240,000 to $245,000 a year in MIPS funding, which is good because we need it for special education costs, for extra things, or for anything that the district needs. So that's kind of a fund that we can use for most anything. But we wanted to prepare for it. We didn't want to be blindsided by any costs. And like I said before, we think that with the special education, with our new salary schedule for special ed people, we are going to reap the benefits from that, but we just aren't going to reap them all in one year. So, so if we're taking $500,000 of the DAA funding, we're now putting that into capital, what are we going to use to replace that for capital? So we have two funds out there. They're called school plant funds, and they can be utilized for capital expenditures. The revenue from those funds comes from our leased buildings. The leases go in there, And then also a sale of school property. In other words, if we have some old equipment, old trucks or whatever, that we can sell at auction and people give us money for them, it goes into the fund, the 501 fund. And the money from there can only be spent for capital. So we do have revenue there, and we don't sell a whole lot of things, but you know what? Whatever it is, we can use for capital. So the annual revenue from the leased property that we get in is about $112,000 a year. And that's going to include the 5% increase that we have in 2 of our lease agreements. And so that's where the revenue is going to come from to support capital expenditures. So with that being said, our 2019-20 maintenance and operation budget will be $20,804,275. The capital outlay proposed budget is $829,155. Our classroom site fund budget is $4.7 million, and then federal and state projects is about $4.5 million. So all of those figures are contained right here in this handy dandy little form. So, do you have any questions for me? Sure.
See if I can read the notes here. On page 2, maybe I think we have to scroll up for the classified site funding per weighted student. When that gets distributed, is that, are they counting the students per site or per district? And then do they divide it per site or per district?
It's collective. In other words, they take, you know, whatever the weighted student count is for the district students, and then they allocate based upon that. So the classroom site funds are allocated into 3 different pots. And the base one, the 011, is 20% of the money coming in. The second pot, the performance pay, is 40%. And then the last one, the 013, which is, we call it the menu bucket, is because salaries come out of that, professional growth can come out of that, teacher salaries can come out of that, and that's another 40%.
And then the other question was, when you talked about the 500,000 of the DAA funding going over into the
M&O.
Over into the M&O. When we sometimes the public doesn't understand certain buckets of money can only be used for certain things. When we put money from one fund into that bucket, can it be pulled back out and used for what it was originally pulled from? Or once it's in that bucket of M&O, does it have to only be used for the M&O?
If we revise the budget, and we can revise the budget as many times as we want during the year. If we feel a need to revise the budget, we can certainly do that. If we say, okay, we really don't need that $500,000 in the M&O, we can put it back over into the capital side. Because the DAA funding is for either M&O or capital. And so you can flip and flop it around if you want to. We don't have to put anything in one of them, or we can put the whole thing, or divide it however we need it. That's one nice thing about that type of funding.
Thank you.
I should have told you before the board meeting, but there was some attachments with emails and phone numbers.
Oh, yes, that is required. The second page, is that
My
what that?
email is wrong, so I was going to request that.
Oh, good, I'm glad you said that.
We had a
because,
problem in the beginning of the year of me not getting my emails, it needs to be CA.
Okay, great, I'm glad you told me that, because they are requiring all of this in email information, so fantastic, thank you, I appreciate that, we'll change that. Anything else? Any other questions I can answer? Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you.
I don't know if anybody else needs this. Edna, does anybody else need this? Does Heather? Oh, Heather doesn't need it? Okay, good.
So
then 4.2, administrative benefit package, Dr. Anderson.
So this is the administrative benefits package. It did not change since last year, with one exception, and really it's really not a change from last year. Last year, our stipend list had our doctorate degrees for our principals, assistant principals, and district office directors, executive directors, that they would get $3,000 as a stipend for earning their doctoral degree. But with our new salary compensation study, our certified staff has it built into the certified schedule. It's not built into our administrative schedule. So, for example, you hire a principal, they get dropped in based on their experience, but not their education level. So this takes into account that educational level that's beyond the master's degree. Every one of those positions that I've listed requires a minimum of a master's degree. So if they go get an additional 60 credits, that's not accounted for in the salary schedule. So that's the only thing that we added it in this benefits package, because within the certified salary schedule, it does not contain that, because the certified schedule has BA plus 15, Masters plus 15, Masters plus 30, all the way to the doctoral program degree, or the doctoral degree. So that's built into the teacher salary. It's not built into the administrative. So that's why it was slid in here, but it has not changed the practice.
Does anybody have any questions?
I do. The difference between the health insurance allocation, for this one, there's no cost for the employee. And was there a cost for the classified and certified?
All of our employees that are 30 hours or more qualify for a primary health insurance at no cost.
That was something we did last year.
Yeah,
Yeah, so-
I thought
Now,
so.
you can upgrade to a lower deductible, and you can pay a difference for that, but everyone qualifies with 30 hours or more as a primary insurance, not secondary, with a $2,700 deductible, I believe it is.
Yep,
Yes.
you're right.
That was a
Any
good
other-
change.
Any other questions? No? Okay, we'll move on to extracurricular stipends and follow up with recommendations for 2019-20, Ms. Wallace.
I'm going to try to balance this because the printers were down, so hopefully. Good evening, my name's Heather Wallace, and I'm the District Director of Educational Services, and I'm here tonight to do updates on the athletic stipends and curricular stipends for the 2019-2020 school year. So I shared with you with the board, and also it's posted on the internet, first the recommendations that I have made for tonight for the athletics department. So the first is, when we look at the stipend schedule for the athletic department, I took back, I had brought a new schedule to you for the junior high and for elementary. We took back the junior high and elementary piece because we felt, after talking with the administrators and the coaches at both those sites, that we needed to spend some more time working collaboratively with them next year, like we did with the high school this year. So the stipend salary that we brought you for athletics is only making changes to the high school athletics. And then the plan is to create a committee next year for the junior high and elementary stipends, and also the fine arts department at the high school. So we'll review those, and then when we come back for the 2020-2021 schedule, we'll have those revisions along with the athletic ones. So the proposed schedule that I gave you was that the schedule is the same as the one I shared with you last time. The only change being that after further review, we felt it important to move soccer up with like sports, because that was the one area that the coach there was a significant difference in the current coaching addendum and the one that we were proposing. So other than moving that, we didn't touch that scale that we proposed to you. The proposal allows for an increase in athletic stipends for all coaches of high school athletics. We understand that there should also be something on the schedule that shows years with us, or years as a coach, so that there's movement for that. But unfortunately, at this time, we can't afford to give both a raise in the stipend and the movement for experience. So we still plan on reviewing that and going back and looking at options for that in years to come. But for this upcoming year, it's a challenge for us to find the money to just give the change in the stipends, to increase the stipends. So the current proposal would need an additional $35,000. From what I looked at, there's approximately 300 athletes at the high school. That doesn't mean that there are 300 different athletes, but 300 athletes throughout the seasons. So with pay to play being $150 per athlete, if we collect at least 237 pay to plays, we can bring in that stipend of $35,000. One of the challenges that our records indicate is collecting the pay to pay. So we have been working on systems to ensure that that is going to be collected, and the hope is that there's more than the $35,000 that we would collect, and that will help with that stipend. So the change for pay to play and the pieces that we're going to continue to work on is, currently we don't have a good breakdown of pay to play monies for tax credit and not tax credit per sport. So we know in a general account for the high school, the pay to play and the pay to play tax credit, but we want to make sure that we're working with the district office and the high school athletic department to make sure we can break that down by sport as we're taking it in. And let me say that people are aware of where it is, but it's not easily found by those looking for it. So somebody's keeping track of it, but we're trying to figure out a system that will allow us to report it out in a more clear manner. We also are going to really be able to identify the number of athletes that participate in each sport, all balances identified per sport versus general budgets, and then accurately identify balances for each sport throughout the season. So as I meet with coaches, one of the concerns that they have had, whether they're new to us, I met with Coach Turner today, and I met with football and baseball yesterday, so those are coaches that have been with us. They don't know the money they have available to them. So part of what we talked about was making sure we had a system where that money, those amounts were being reported out to them, and we talked about, part of why I met with them now is because they're building budgets for their upcoming season, so they better understand what money they need, what they have, and then that helps me at this level also to understand the needs of each sport. The other thing that I've talked to all the coaches about is that all our athletes will be allowed to try out without paying their fees, but they won't be able to practice until their pay-to-pay fees are paid. So the coaches are supposed to be talking to their players about that and making sure that kids are understanding the change in the system. And then we're preparing a letter that'll go home to parents so that parents understand that there's been a change in system. And I will say, again, from my meetings with coaches, I don't think that we have just not collected fees. I think there's a lot of big hearts out there, and we haven't maybe taken time to figure out if we can get donations for pay to play, or have a fund, or talk with Booster, or do some other things to increase the amount of pay to play that we bring in. I think it's been hard on coaches to turn kids away. And so giving the coaches some support to build capacity within their budgets to allow for kids to come to them for assistance will be helpful. And then on that, down that same line, we're going to create a panel, like a panel to review the assistance that's needed and then help kids each season with figuring out ways to pay their pay to play. So we want Project Help to work with us. We'll look at community scholarships. We'll have athlete sponsorships, and then as a last resort, like a payment plan that kids can keep up with, and then a way to keep up with that to make sure throughout the season it's being paid. Then the other recommendation is to have updates that come to the board. So there'll be updates after fall, winter, and spring seasons are completed. The updates will include the number of athletes that participated per sport, the amount of pay to play that was collected, the balances in each sport account at the end of the season, and then we will also highlight the seasons for the sports, recognition of athletes for the season. So we want to recognize our graduating seniors who played their last season and make other recognitions to determine by that planning committee. And then moving forward, as I just spoke about, we're going to review fine arts stipends for the high school and for the revision for the 2021 stipend updates. Review the Cactus Canyon and the elementary stipends. Bring back an overview of what is needed to add experience to those stipend schedules, and then continue on with the current parent and community athletic budget team. So we want to keep that team in place also to be helping with the status of the budgets. So any questions about my recommendations?
I have a couple questions on the process.
Okay.
So I'm not sure, like, the coach should be the one who has to administer the pay-to-play program. Is there going to
They're
be
not.
a system put into place?
The coaches aren't the person.
Okay,
It'll be the athletic secretary and whoever's working as the AD at that point. What the coaches have to be responsible for is knowing if kids can come out or not. Like, if we tell you they're cleared, then they can be on the field. If they've not been cleared, it's your responsibility to make sure they're not on the field. So that's where they have to take responsibility, because what's happening is they're the ones allowing kids on the field, not understanding if they've been cleared or not. But they don't deal with the money or the who's cleared.
No,
or
that
any of
I understand that part, but in
Yeah.
terms of following up to find out who's paid and who, like, they
So-
need to be given that information, and then
Yes.
obviously it's their.
And you can see that information right on Register My Athlete. The athletic secretary checks off that the student's cleared, and each coach has a way to get in, so that there'll be another system in place so that kids are given, in my opinion, a pass to get to the first practice, or a pass when they're cleared, that they hand over to the coach that first time they come to practice, and the coach checks them off. But the coaches also can get in to Register My Athlete at any time, at any point during the day, and see which of their kids have been cleared.
And then the process that you talked about in terms of the updates each season with the
Uh-huh.
pay-to-play information, will that include the budgets for each?
Yeah, so see where it says on the third bullet, balances in each sport, so tax credit, pay to play tax credit, auxiliary and student activity for each sport.
And with regards to the amount of the stipends, I mean, and looking at other district stipends, these proposed stipends in many cases are on years 2 and 3 of other districts' stipends, so, which is fine to start out, but then a lot of these steps are years 2 and 3 on much larger districts.
So that's why if we review for movement, we may not start out, you'd start out a lot lower.
Okay.
These were just looking at the coaching staff that we have and being able to be competitive enough to get new coaches, but competitive enough to keep the current coaches, to find a middle ground.
I have a couple things.
Okay.
So piggybacking off of the plan for the play-to-play,
Mm-hmm.
we've had a lot of issues in the past we've talked about in the communication with the coaches and how we're gonna work on that process, and can we bring it back to how the process is really gonna take place, because I know in the past there's been a lack of communication to the coaches. It's embarrassing to the kids.
Right.
And it doesn't seem like it's a smooth transition.
Right.
And when your coach is telling you, hey, you can't play at a championship game, or hey, you can't play in front of all the other kids, it's embarrassing. So we need to work on that.
So I have a meeting planned with Sandra Bohr and the bookstore, Carrie at the bookstore at the high school, and Belinda, when they're all back on contract. Because part of what I think is confusing is there's so many different people in the process that this person's not sure if that person or this person. So part of what we're working on is a process for what pieces Belinda is responsible for as the athletic secretary, where Dr. Lineberry still wants Carrie involved, or what she's going to be doing with accounts. And then Sandra knows what she's been doing for years, and so having all of them in a room together to really figure out what a process is going to be for the collecting of money and the pay-to-play. A big part of the pay-to-play, though, I believe is going to change with them having to do register my athlete.
Right.
Because any of, whether it's Belinda or the coaches, myself, the athletic director, that anybody can get in at any time and see that they've been cleared, including the parents and the students. The parents can log in and see that they're cleared. Kids can log in right on their phone and show it to the coach that they've been cleared.
That's good. Yeah.
So, but I think that, and that will also help because they pay online.
Right.
So whoever's tracking it, it still shows right there online, and it shows you've been cleared. So.
And then, I don't remember, as far as the baseball, I know that they were wanting to have that extra coach. When you met with baseball, was that settled, or?
Well, they still are requesting an extra coach, so I told them that once we were back in school and kids were registered for school and they had players that they knew were coming to us, then to come back and we'd have another meeting to look at numbers, just like we'll do with all the sports, and what I told all the sports, to make sure there's enough or not hopefully too many coaches in areas. And baseball was good with that. So they know they have 5, they're hoping for their 6th one, but we talked about how it would be necessary for them to have the kids.
And then the soccer percentage, is that, am I missing that, or is that somewhere? Can you share with us what that?
It's on that.
It's 9.
What-
It's the same as ours.
It's baseball, basketball, softball, track, volleyball, wrestling, and soccer are 9.
And then when you talk about the recognition,
Mhm.
are we also talking about recognizing the students at the board meetings as well?
So my idea was that when I did an update, I would recognize the seniors that are graduating, because the numbers I hoped would be more controllable. But I know that part of what Dr. Anderson had worked together with the athletic department at the high school was about having a victory with honor or a similar recognition of that type. So whether that if that gets into play and gets moving, it may take away from what's actually happening with recognition at the board meeting, because they would be recognized at that event. But if not, then they would be recognized here with that.
So right now we're just focused on the seniors?
For right now, because in my mind it was controllable, the number. Like, if you brought all the football players in here, it'd probably be a lot of kids with their parents. But if you brought just the seniors who were leaving, and that was just my idea. There could be better ideas when the committee gets together to plan that. It was just to give some recognition.
We can talk more about that.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not set in stone.
No.
Because there's ideas we captured.
No, there's a lot of ideas. And I don't know, and to be honest, I don't know who's recognized at the banquets or at the victory for honor, if that is a dinner and like, those are just ideas to talk about and move forward with.
I think the reason why I'm concerned is we've talked about this in the past as a board, like the lack of recognizing. And I know when I actually went camping a couple weekends ago, and there was a coach from Campo Verde, and he's like, well, I gotta go to a board meeting and recognize the track team. And I thought he was, but those are things that I think we should
Right.
be doing as well.
Right.
We need to be recognizing, we need to start doing more than student of the month, I think.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's all I got for you now.
Madam President? Anybody else? Did you?
I have.
Oh, go ahead. You go.
So the committee that you're, talking about, is it gonna be an oversight committee? Like, what is it you're looking, I would like to see
So
something.
I think it's important to keep intact the parent committee that's been working on the budget.
Right.
I know that there needs to be a committee and somebody to work with the boosters and to kind of get boosters going. I would like there to be a committee that works on being more fair and equitable about pay to play. And that committee about recognizing students and bringing back to the board after each season. That's a lot of committees and a lot of different people. So as I go down the path of talking to those people, I'm hoping like a committee, an athletic committee will rise from that can kind of help like different people that can support all areas, so it's not dominated by a sport or a group.
Right, that's what I'm asking.
But has some help in giving input into athletics.
Right.
So that there's parents, students, and community members that
And
can
will we get a
support.
report from the committee?
You
Regarding,
would
like, what is-
when we come back after each season and talk about what they've done or what they've helped with or give you those updates.
Okay, I had to take a picture of my notes there, like,
Okay.
so I'm just gonna give you, so recognition of coaches at board meetings, I know we discussed that. And then is there anything like, I know it might be early, but maybe bonuses for coaches that may
For when they
stay-
go to state.
When they go to state,
So
something
it,
like that.
like, all of those things are great, but it
Yeah.
all comes back to funding.
Right.
So if we had money, we would give levels.
Well, it's
If we
like
had
an
money,
incentive.
we'd give those are on other stipend schedules. The reason that we didn't put some of those, well, a lot of those things in is just budget reasons. So
Right.
now, the one thing I'm trying to find is money to increase the stipends.
Okay.
So as we grow pots, which is hopefully what I talked to the coaches about, how to grow their money and fundraise and ask for community support or, some of the coaches are really good about getting tax credits from businesses or different things. So kind of sharing that.
Okay, and then is, like, for me, volleyball mom, there's always a confusion of what coaches can do and can't do as far as like funding, like POs, but they can submit.
So we're,
things like that.
before Dawn left, she shared with Tanya and I, code book for coaches that each coach would get, so each head coach would get, to understand kind of how you request a PO or where this money can be spent or what you're expected to pay for.
So they
and
kind of
those
know
kind
what
of
they
things.
can.
Mhm. And the other thing that I talked to the coaches about when I met with them this week was that they're gonna go back and work on kind of budgets. We met to talk about what they needed for summer. Then they're gonna go back and start thinking about their budgets. We're gonna meet again in July when they're all back, because they're all going different places and they have camps and stuff. And then we'll meet either seasonally or quarterly to just keep working together and making sure that everybody's got a more clear understanding of their role in and what they're expected to be doing.
And I know like some sports do individual banquets, maybe like seasonal banquets can be done where like every season for all those seasonal sports.
So that would be a conversation to have with the coaches, because I don't know that football wants to have a banquet with soccer. I mean, maybe they do, but so I don't want to speak for them, but I don't know that some of them don't like doing just their sport one. But those are all
That was
things we can
that
talk
was
about.
suggested to me,
Okay.
so.
Okay.
So I have a couple of questions, Tim. Just to reiterate, so the funding for the stipends is coming from pay-to-play fees and tax credits,
We're hoping from pay to play.
okay?
But that's because there's already money in the budget that's given from the M&O budget to sports. This change of 35,000 is the increase in the stipends. So we have to find another way to generate those funds because we don't have more money coming to us from M&O.
And
So
we do have 124,000 that is going to stipends for our high school for athletics as well as our fine arts and co-curricular. So as we continue to look at this, we know that we want to continue to increase our teacher salaries, our classified salaries. We need curricular materials in classrooms, professional development. So we do have a limited budget. So we want to keep that in mind, that as we allocate money, where we spend our time, money, and resources is what is important to us. And so we want to keep going back to our strategic plan and making sure that we're focused on meeting those goals.
And then, so when each of these categories of sports fundraise, does that go into one pool of money in the boosters, or does that go to each individual, the football team fundraises, does that go just to the
So it's
football team?
supposed to go to their account, but from talking to the coaches, they don't feel like it has.
Mhm.
I can't tell you that it has or hasn't. I can only tell you what I've watched this year, and I've made sure it's gone to their accounts. But for example, soccer at the junior high raised money. That money went to a high school soccer account because there wasn't a junior high account. So now Sandra Bohr is working with me to make sure there's accounts at the junior high so that if they raise, so wrestling has a junior high account and wrestling has a high school account.
Yeah.
So the money that the high school raises goes to the high school kids and the money that the junior high goes to the junior high kids. And that's not to say that we don't like the football helmets. We share those across the campuses based on need and size of students, but when the kids at the junior high are raising money, they want that money separate so they can buy the shirts they wanted for soccer. And so Sandra's been working really hard with myself and with the coaches to make sure those new accounts are being set up and I've been meeting with the junior high, with Mr. Delore at the junior high to make sure that junior high money stays at the junior high and the high school stays at the high school. So the fundraisers should go to their own accounts.
Absolutely.
So I think we're kind of getting off topic here.
Yeah.
I think we need to condense it just to the stipends.
And so what I think is important as far as the stipends go is that, well, I think as far as the funding goes, it is part of the conversation. But I think as far as the stipends go, what makes it important is that we understand in our community and through the school district and with other schools, sports are important. And so there's been a lot of conversation about, how do we remain competitive with the teachers' pay and the classified staff's pay. This is also a key part of that. It's an element that we need to look at in order to make us competitive. It also attracts students.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is an important key to the whole attracting students and attracting good quality coaches and retaining them.
Mm-hmm.
So we really appreciate the work that you guys are putting into this and working with the coaches. And it sounds like the communication process is definitely
It's
working on being
better.
improved.
I'm learning a lot.
Some training with budgets and teaching them, teaching them how to.
That's a work in
Thank you for
progress.
that.
Yes,
Thank
it
you.
is. But they've all been super helpful, so they've taken my learning curve and helped me, so.
You've worked hard on this, Heather.
Thank you. So, the next piece that I shared with you was the extracurricular stipends. So those are the stipends across the district, that we give out. So we bring you these stipends so that we can allocate them out throughout the school year for 2019, 2020. So, there's not a lot of changes that we made to this, and like I said, fine arts at the high school will be the next department that we work with. But were there any questions that you had about the stipends? I will say that Cactus Canyon, there were questions that were raised about Cactus Canyon sports because some sports have one coach, some sports have two coaches. So I talked to Cactus Canyon's administration team, and we're going to meet when we get back in July to kind of look at how they allocate coaches and how we decide if there's one coach or 3 coaches or 2 coaches. But all those stipends will stay at $1,300 for the school year, but there might not be as many allocated out. So any other questions about any of the stipends that we had on here?
Can you talk about the retention?
Oh, yeah.
for math?
So the first tab is that hard to fill and retention. So the hard to fill is for high school economics, math, and science. Those are stipends that teachers get when they sign on with us, kind of like a signing bonus. The retention stipend is new for this upcoming year. It's to encourage math teachers to stay with us. The reason we were able to pull out math teachers is because when I take retention stipends out of the grant, which is where the hard to fill and the retention stipends come out of Title II, there has to be a criteria to how you give the retention. So we have to say that in your math class, this percentage of students will hit this percentage of the AZ merit test. We aren't able to do that with the other areas, so we're starting with math. There's the possibility of doing things with Galileo, but at the same time, we don't always test all those areas. So that's why we haven't been able to, so we're starting with the math in hopes of retaining the math teachers because they are hard to fill.
And specifically what we're looking at is looking at our AZ merit results. We know that with our strategic plan is that we are trying to at least hit the state average in all of our grade levels. And so if a teacher, one of our high school level math teachers, hits the state average, then they would qualify for that $1,500. So it's an incentive for them to have that improvement in that academic results as well.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to action items. Item 5.1 is the possible action on social worker and behavior specialist job descriptions that were presented at our last meeting, and Ms. Wallace sent out revised job descriptions on those positions. Does anybody have any discussion or would like to make a motion?
Madam President, is there a question?
Did you have a question? I thought you said you had one.
I do, but I didn't, it sounded like somebody.
I don't have a question, I was just gonna make a motion if
The only question that I had on this was for the,
Is this for the?
I thought it was on both of them.
Job descriptions.
Oh,
Okay.
for the preferred qualifications, current in the nonviolent intervention training.
So CPI training.
Yeah.
So we prefer you have that, but we have trainers in the district and we run our own training. So we're not gonna knock an applicant out for not having it, but if you had it, then it benefits us because you already have it.
Perfect, that's perfect.
Yeah.
My question was kind of that I was surprised to see it was preferred, but
And
that
that's
makes
why.
sense
That's
because we
why.
can train them.
Yeah.
Perfect,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? Somebody like to make a motion?
Madam President, I motion to approve the social worker and behavioral specialist job description.
I second.
Any further discussion? Ms. Garcia?
Yes.
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Ms. Rizzi?
Yes.
Ms. Kimball?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that motion passes with a vote of 5-0. Item 5.2, possible action on high school sports and district extracurricular stipends for the 2019-20 school year. Would somebody like to make a motion?
Madam President, I'd like to motion to approve the district extracurricular stipends for 2019-2020 school year.
Second.
Any further discussion? Ms. Garcia?
Yes.
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Ms. Rizzi?
Yes.
Ms. Kimball?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that motion passes with a vote of 5-0. So we're going to go to item 5.3, possible action on Superintendent Advisory Committee recommendations. Again, this was something that was presented by the committee at the previous board meeting. Does anybody want to have have any discussion, or would somebody like to make a motion?
Can I give one correction? Sorry. When I gave the presentation, I did give one piece of wrong information, so I do want to correct that, and that was on the demographic study. The 85% that I referenced was actually the number of students that are actually attending our district, or 85% of the students who are currently attending our district schools, they're attending their home schools. And so the actual information on our demographic study was that we are educating 55% of the students that are in our population, and so we do have the potential of recapturing those other 45% of children that are opting for the charter schools, or they're in another public school system. So I just want to make sure that I correct that.
Okay.
So did we separate,
Yeah, so
we've got 3 separate things on the, so the way that the agenda is set, I'm a little confused.
I know, it's kind of confusing. So one is the super advisory committee recommendation, and then the other 2 are the actual bond and override.
Actually calling for the election.
Calling for the election. So one is to accept the committee's recommendations, which, yeah, because I'm like, the recommendations are those 2 things, so I'm not sure if that's redundant, like to have the one, so we could.
So I do have comments. I don't know if anybody else has any comments or anything that they wanted to discuss about the recommendation and the presentation.
Go ahead.
This was kind of going into this committee. I really appreciated being a part of it, and I really appreciated the other perspectives that were on the committee. There was a wide variety of people from the community, from the school district, stakeholders, and I'll be honest, I shared some concerns going in as far as the 2019 being the year that we possibly go out for an election. My only concern was that, and I want to make sure that this is clarified. We've all talked about the needs here in our district, and the superintendent has made tours available to see what's happening in our district and what our needs are, and has expressed the needs in a lot of different areas throughout the last year and a half, 2 years. My only reservation was the timing, and I had expressed that. And so through being on this committee, I had talked with some committee members and also some community members to get their perspective about the timing of it. The timing was my only concern. It just felt short. We've got a lot of work to do for this 2019 year. And I really appreciate the people that gave their perspective in the committee, the people that I reached out to that were just very genuine in talking to me about why 2019 would be better than 2020. It really convinced me, and it really, that 2019 is the better way to go. There's pros and cons both ways, but we've got to get some funding going, and we've got to get it going ASAP, because if the community does come through for this, it takes time for that funding to come through, and things are falling apart, and our kids just deserve better. And so I just wanted to thank the committee members that are here, the committee members that aren't here, and the community members that took the time to talk with me and give their perspective about why, yes, 2020 really is the better, 2019 really is the better way to go over 2020. And so I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, I think we all expressed our gratitude for the committee members who all took out so much time out of their lives to participate, and in such a thorough way that hasn't been done, I think, in a really long time. So I think for me, approving the recommendations includes, we'll vote on the separate override and bond, but approving the recommendation includes the things that were presented regarding the communication and the committee oversight and all of those things that were part of that process rather than just those two items itself. So, I mean, for me, I think that we should have a motion regarding the committee recommendations as a whole. And again, just to additionally express thanks to everybody who gave their time and effort to the process. Anybody else have any? Okay, would somebody like to make a motion?
Madam President, I motion to approve the Superintendent Advisory Committee recommendation.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Ms. Garcia?
Yes.
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Ms. Rizzi?
Yes.
Ms. Kimball?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that motion passes with a vote of 5-0. So now we'll move on to item 5.4. So we had a public comment, Ms. Andrea Sims.
My notes are
Trying not to forget you.
It's okay. My notes are on my phone. I promise I'm not being disrespectful. Good evening. Thank you, Madam President and the Governing Board. My name is Andrea Sims. I am a parent in this community. I am a fellow educator. We own a business in this community, and I have nothing but love for the kids in this community. And I had the great privilege of being able to work on the Superintendency Advisory Council. And what I've learned in that process, and I know I've got 3 minutes, so I'm going to, I bulleted, and
It's like a principal.
Yep, gonna try to be very concise. But here's what I'm hearing, and so I've been very reflective as I sat here. I've had the great fortune of being in 2 amazing conferences in the last 5 days, both in Tucson, for leaders in Arizona in public education. And the first conference, I was able to listen to a man talk about giving life-giving conversations. And this bond and override is going to be very complex. This is a community that needs to be very, very confident in what they talk about, where they are having those conversations, and who they are talking with. And all of our conversations have to be life-giving, and it's life-giving to children. So our grown-ups are going to have to be a little uncomfortable in that process, and that's okay, because if we have life-giving conversations about children and making public education better in Apache Junction, our enrollment will go up, our businesses will be more successful, our real estate will be more sellable, and we will thrive. And I've been here for 20 years, and I've seen it thrive, and we have to do something. In the process of being part of the conversations, I was able to visit campuses, and I work in a neighboring district where our children do not go to school and see broken sinks, missing tile. We don't have arguments about where the money went if I paid to play. We don't. And those are systems that need to be put in place. So the biggest word I heard tonight, oversight. Everybody here wants oversight. The board wants oversight. The public wants oversight. As a parent, I want oversight. As a principal, I want oversight. I believe that if we are transparent, if we build knowledge, and if we make sure that our community understands where this money will go, because it's needed. And I know that there's a debate about how much is truly needed. We need to walk that campus together, and then we'll go walk Skyline. And you'll understand why. And equity-based education means that our kids, and some of them are back there, deserve it. Right? So that's my stance. I am the Political Action Committee Chair. Can't imagine why. I am accepting all personal emails after this meeting. Thank you for giving me the time to speak. I know that we can do this. Our hashtag is yes, yes, our kids, our community.
Yes.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Awesome job.
Okay, we're going to move on to 5.4A, possible action for a call for a $60 million bond election in November of 2019 in accordance with ARS 15-481A. And I will say that Brian Lundberg from Stifel is here, as well as Shelby Exposito from Gus and Rosenfeld, if we have any questions for them specifically regarding the election or the process or anything like that. So if anybody has any discussion or questions. Ms. Rizzi, let's start with your question. Yeah.
So we had somebody that came and spoke out of the public, and the one question that I had was, you know, I don't know if we can address any of her concerns, but I've been asked from the public, what happens when, you know, we have these estimates and costs of things that need repairing? What happens if we can do it for less?
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Anderson, Brian Lundberg with Stiefel. I know it looks like Stifle, because it looks
Oh,
like.
sorry.
But, no. If you look at it,
It's like
it
the
really
third
would
mistake
say
I've made
Stifle.
tonight,
No,
so.
it's okay, and it doesn't
Something
bother me. Anyways.
Yeah, do you want to come up here? So
Yeah, sure. No problem. Once the election is called, basically the ballot question is approved, and you'll see that there's a laundry list of projects that are approved on the ballot question. And there's a few other parameters that are approved as well, but it approves a not to exceed principal amount of bonds. Our statute says that voters, when they vote, 50 plus 1% plus one vote, that authorizes the board to sell the bonds, and the bonds can be sold in one or more phases, but after 10 years, the amount that was approved by voters sunsets. So the board does not have to sell any of the bonds at all, but if it decides during that 10-year period, it can sell bonds in phases. So I'll stop there in case there's follow-up on that.
So just to clarify, if you didn't use the whole, you don't sell them all.
So if the estimates were less, then, okay.
Correct. Madam President, members of the board, I'll just remind you as well, there was 49 million of bonds approved by voters in this district in 2004, and I think it was 10 or 12 million that weren't sold because those projects weren't needed at the time. And so that amount expired 2014.
I have a question regarding the primary tax rate. So that hasn't been set as of yet. If it's lower than what is estimated due to values increasing, that would affect the estimate of the household cost of the bond and override. Is that accurate?
Madam President, members of the board, primary tax rate is used to fund the district's M&O and district additional assistant budget. As you know, once you levy the qualifying tax rate, then the state aid would kick in to fill the rest. But the bond and the override are what are referred to as secondary taxes, and so would only be funded through the secondary tax rate for the district. But maybe I didn't answer your question completely.
So if the primary tax rate decreases, I just want to make sure I understand this right.
Sure.
Then the essential cost to the homeowner goes down a little bit for that line item.
Correct.
So then the secondary rate would still add to it, but the net effect, if the rate decreases, could potentially be less than what was originally estimated, because what was estimated is based on the current tax rate.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, I'll try to make this can be very complicated, so I hope I don't make it worse in answering that question. But the primary tax rate goes down when taxable property across the entire state goes up, and that's what's been happening. But when it comes to the secondary tax rate, it's used to fund bonds and overrides of just this district. So that tax rate would go down if property within this district would go up. And so you can see there's a dynamic there. Depends on how the district property values change relative to the state. But to answer your question, yes, as property values go up, the tax rate goes down. The most beneficial thing that could happen is that more taxpayers or new property is added. Every time that happens, everybody pays a little bit less taxes. Otherwise, if it's the same property paying the same amount of taxes, and all of our property goes up or all of our property goes down at the same, your taxes don't really change. I'll stop there because it gets kind of wild after that, if that makes any sense.
Does anybody have any other questions?
I do, but I just didn't know if there was Cammy or Chelsea.
I'm good right now, I'm following.
The only other question, and I know this really comes from the Political Action Committee, but the only other question that I really got asked was about the Oversight Committee. I don't know if you've worked with them, how does that work? If we're talking about a 10-year period, how do you find people for the committee? How long do they stay on the committee? And can you give a general idea of what that looks like?
Madam President, members of the board, yes, there are oversight committees out there. Not every district has them. A lot of districts use what was suggested also, which is a very transparent website with varying levels of detail on what was approved and what's been spent. I will say that the state law does require a public meeting as long as every fall, as long as there's bond proceeds that have been unspent, or if there's an override in place. So there's various items. An oversight committee is not required, but that's at the pleasure of the board to form. The board can decide to put that kind of language in a voter pamphlet statement. It has an opportunity to do that. But typically, the oversight committees that I've been involved with were either in place already, or they're put in place right after the election passes. Because if it doesn't pass, then you don't need such an oversight committee. But we have several examples that I can think of off the top of my head that if you have any questions about them, I can answer to the best of my memory. There's varying levels of involvement that are undertaken across the state. I'll stop there. Because it is a complicated, so it can be a little complicated to figure out what you want them to do, but they can be formed.
Any other questions? Was there anything that you would like to add?
Madam President, members of the board, my firm, Gus Rosenfeld, also works with districts to help create the informational pamphlet. And so if an oversight committee was something that you wanted to be added to the pamphlet, we could certainly work with you on some suggested language for that.
Thank you.
Again, I know that that's something that would come down the road, but I think, given our history, I think it's not a secret that for whatever reasons, I'm hoping that we're past losing the trust of the community, that we've worked with this new board and our new superintendent in bringing some really great things to the school district for our kids, for their learning experience, for well-rounded education, and would hope that the community is ready to, I know we've certainly worked on rebuilding that trust, and I would hope that the community is willing to see that in us. You know, they've put a lot of new people here on the board, and like I said, with the superintendent, we've got a lot of great staff members. It's all about building trust, and if that's what this community feels like they need, then I would suggest that we definitely make that a part of it. If that's what they need for transparency, then give them that oversight committee.
Part of the Superintendent Advisory Council recommendation, it was not only the $60 million bond and the $2 million capital. The third part of that recommendation was an oversight. So that is what you've approved already, is that an oversight committee would be a part of this process, and we would look at creating that oversight committee once the election is over and once we get those 2 yeses that we are hoping.
Okay, would somebody like to make a motion to call for a $2 million capital election in November 2019 in accordance with ARS 15-481-A?
Madam President, so moved.
We have a motion, do we have a second? Kimball seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Garcia?
Yes.
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Ms. Rizzi?
Yes.
Ms. Kimball?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that motion passes with a vote of 5-0. So would somebody like to make a motion for a possible to call for a $60 million bond election in November of 2019 in accordance with ARS 15-491-A?
Madam President, so moved.
We have a motion, do we have a second? Ms. Kimball seconds. Any further discussion? Ms. Garcia?
Yes.
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Ms. Rizzi?
Yes.
Ms. Kimball?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that motion passes with a vote of 5-0. All right, now we're going to go to item 3.5 from the consent agenda, which is the Special Education Services Menta Intergovernmental Agreement for the EDP programs for 2019-20. Ms. Rizzi had some questions?
I just had a quick question, Madam President, thank you. On the Menta contract, how do we seek legal advice, or how are those contracts? How do
They're
we
reviewed by the legal team, the district team, the district legal team.
I am blanking the name of our.
They're reviewed by Ms. Logan, I believe, just prior to getting to this point.
Yeah, by Shumlin, Udall Shumway, that looks at all our IGAs before we accept them. They work together with the
team that we're creating the IGA with.
Thank you. I assumed that, but I didn't want to
Yeah.
assume that.
I don't
And
know
then
if you could say that as a lawyer, so I didn't.
it's okay. It's okay. Thank you. That was my question. Are we seeking legal
We do.
to write those? And then on 3.7, the purchasing department vendors.
So let's do this one first, and we'll have to do that
Okay.
second.
Okay.
Any further questions on that item? Would somebody like to make a motion?
Madam President, I move that we approve the purchasing department, sorry about that, the special education services intergovernmental agreement for ED-P programs for 2019-2020.
Ms. Kimball seconds. Any further discussion? Ms. Garcia?
Yes.
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Ms. Rizzi?
Yes.
Ms. Kimball?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that motion passes with a vote of 5-0. So we're going to move to 3.7, which is the purchasing department seeking board approval to renew the annual contracts for the 2019 school year. Current contracts expire June 30th, 2019, and require board approval to extend for an additional one-year period, which is in compliance with the procurement rules.
Thank you, Madam President. Again, I just had a couple questions, and I'm not sure who I asked.
I will do my best.
Okay. How often do we go out to the community to look for vendors or give different vendors an opportunity to be a vendor?
We have on our website, if we have someone who wants to be a vendor, the directions on how to apply to be a vendor are there. All they have to do is supply a W-9 form for us, and it's very simple criteria, and they can ask to be a vendor, and we will definitely put them on our bid list.
And so it's continuous, that anybody can go to the website. So once these are approved, these are annual approvals, and in the middle of that process, people can apply, and when it comes up again, they can be considered.
Yep.
And I think that was the only question. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Would somebody like to make a motion?
Madam President, I move that we approve the renewal contracts for 2019-2020 school year, current contracts that expire on June 30th, 2019, require board approval to extend for an additional one-year period. This recommendation is in compliance with the school district procurement rules.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Any further discussion? Ms. Garcia?
Yes.
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Ms. Rizzi?
Yes.
Ms. Kimball?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that motion passes with a vote of 5-3. So now we're going to go back down to possible executive session per ARS 38-43103A1, discussion on superintendent's performance pay. Would somebody like to make a motion to go into executive session?
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session. Do I need to do it per ARS 38-431.03A1 to discuss the superintendent's performance pay?
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Garcia?
Yes.
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Ms. Rizzi?
Yes.
Ms. Kimball?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so we are going to go into executive session and we'll be back. Yeah. And we've already said thank you a lot, but again, another thank you to all the committee members who are here.
That's really what it is. Okay. I wish I could. Okay, I have no answer to that. Apache Junction. Yeah, that's really not elementary versus okay. But at least with the average overall, which is considered 60 million. So I could I was thinking that it had already been worked out because I know I proved that after seeing the presentation tonight, I think the number I heard before was for base salary. So I was thinking it was still going to be somewhere in the just that I could see
And then I went online and I saw that school architecture in New York, schools. They got the nets up to the side of the stadium. The environment is so nice. I will share that.
There's a school called Edna, or this is what I'm going so that's why it does take a while to do it. Just so that same thing.
So to me, now the challenge is getting the word out. And how do we drive that process to get everybody on board in the community that's going to vote in the
It's a challenge.
Yeah. I mean, people who have done this before.
Whatever they do, take the foot down.
That's what I did. That's nonsense.
Somehow in the process,
So I would say, if you don't want to get
You do, and I
that way.
No, it's not that, I just want you to understand. But it is grassroots. But let me tell you why. You're sort of targeting my money and money's involved, but you don't like it's all over the
But to me, that's like the sacred
if we go out and put a sign for, I'm gonna go out and
Exactly.
you already know, and this is here, so it says paid for by, yes, for our county, for our kids. And then you can actually go on, although now it's not really good. I mean, so, but now, you can go look, and you know when, like, 500 more, we're showing you all the money, and we can show you all the money, and these, so, and it's not a, better schools committee, and you can't find out things. It's all takes another that's providing the resources that we're actually needing. If we didn't have that, everybody, and we're way $5. They actually knows that they can really the shoe so that someone can I mean, that's a school bus. Now, we rented a private bus, okay, for a lot of us, we can do that. We got to pay for it. You need extra resources. So that's really right, you could, but someone's got to pay for this. I mean, that's, so we're going to sure, you can. But you also want consistency. I mean, so. But you the money doesn't bother me at all. What bothers me is when I don't, you know, there's a lot of people that, Walmart or tobacco companies are running this ad. I just want to know. And I think that's what you, I don't care, don't tell me, citizens for, Health Society. And that's
Somebody supporting or opposing. I just want to know who's funding. And when you start, because I do it like consulting, I am, you're basically trying to find where the money and it's Delaware, you can't always give it's really helpful. But I would tell you, we're not anywhere near that. That's why I thought you were great, and that's the wrong word. To be, have a part that says pay for by our taxes. Like, I want you to be comfortable with that, to know that. Because otherwise we're going to be already corporation, right? Well, not corporation, but we've got the county. Right. Andrea is the chair, I'm the treasurer of the bank. We already filed, we already have our EIN. That's all set. Okay. I just want you, I want you, I don't want you to, so I'm trying to find that sense of where I belong. What I'm trying to do is I don't really feel good. Applying for what? Then I want you to feel, then I want you to, I want you to be, I mean, I'm not trying, because I'm very to be a and I No. It's, but we've been talking, so. No, I'm not trying to. So, it's like I explained. There's a revised action.
That's amazing.
Well, I don't.
Interesting. Yeah. You just think there's more left turn. It's so unexpected. I'm just naive sometimes because I was just hearing all this commotion. I thought the guys were inside just being silly. I'm thinking, what are you guys doing? It'll be quick. Of course.
I understand. That's why I understand. I just, you're again, me, Joe, I'm with you. Speak to process all day long. But can't, good thing, be a part of the group that we go.
So, and they have
That's the problem. So that just when you I do. No, it's not negative. I know, but it is going to be very important for us to get this done. So we don't like all jobs that were tricky. And they're rated as like 4 academics. I see that as a problem. I just said that. You said I go door to door. I don't know when you're like, you know, to me, it's going, you know, go out one side and stay at the door. There you go. That's going to be very important. That is important. Because half the community is going to feel that. Because there's a lot of people that think just like we do, that will as a negative connotation because of all the national, not only the national, but a lot of the communities around us are creating ordinances around it. And so it's very important. So it's in the paper, you know. So it's very important. I just, and I'm not disagreeing, I just have a different, well, no, it's what I say to you, the longer you understand about it. I do, and part of it is, you know, we are transparent, so I think that's a very important goal for you to put out. I mean, it is very important, but you have to dynamics of the community. I understand. The reason that they're not voting for them as lack of trust of organizations that push. Well, I think
I'm sure some of it's organization, and then some of it is lack of trust with the district, and disagreement on policy. And part of it is, it's a tax. I mean, that's a
I look at my yard, it goes, education. You know, I think it will, but locally, there's like 6 of them.
Right. Because you have CIC, yeah.
You know, a couple of overrides by the school district. You know, now we're at 6. They're either very smart.
Yeah, no, my dad said that. My dad would raise me like, keep going, I'll verify it.
We'll get you letters, that will be, so that's done. That's not,
I would absolutely go door to door.
hold on 1 second.
I'm good, I'm just like.
This is hers right here. It's owned by CPS, right? $50,000.
So I mean, that's how I feel about it. So I'm an elementary school principal and baseball.
What's your name?
So I wrote.
Well, I'm not, my personal involvement.
We have a staff meeting on Monday. We asked
Yeah,
you to have
we
a
work.
by Friday at 2 o'clock.
So why aren't you over there across the street?
Because
And I was saying because it's all about. I know who hasn't done it. I get a reminder it's out there on Friday at 2 o'clock. So we have a meeting, right? So if I ask. So our community is asking for this extra.
They will not do it.
I don't want to do that.
I understand. So, well, I understand it's a road complete, but I understand it's also a partnership.
I would love to. And if I said when I raise the money to do something like that, I also look back programs on which. So we're in the process. It was a great process. We've done this time the rhino recreation concept.
It's not like you're.
And to the operation.
Ready?
Yes. So we're meeting Monday, I'll get you some stuff beforehand.
Just want to make sure everything's right.
Agenda.
That's good.
Get stuff going. Yeah. And we got like 3 or 4 days. Yeah, that's it. Okay? Good. Yes, I'm walking out.
My family's holding dinner for me. Mostly just, I've been
Everybody else. I can understand. I look at our community, I ask myself.
Thank you.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you for your support very much. Appreciate it. I'm sure we'll be.
Just understand that just because we might not be a part of it, we are.
And that's huge. We'll get you on the letter and some other stuff.
Knowledge that really helps people understand the systems.
And that's huge. And, you know, if we need, might be helpful, we'll get some talking points out. You know, that's,
Yeah. So you can consult. How about you consult?
You know, I typically charge, but I do pay for the road.
We're nonprofit. So we're just gonna bring old friends.
You're 20 years old. I do appreciate that support. I'm truly on board with you guys.
No, I appreciate it.
I know.
But I just want you to, I respect what you're coming from, but for me, so you understand, if you're illegal, again, what's happened in other places is you get tagged for electioneering without, you're not following the rules, and that's why, as an individual, that's why, but I don't want to get, you're not following the rules. No, and you as an individual can go out and do that. I just want to make sure, like when we have a material, we need to have the disclosure on it. And I don't want you to
We're
present
also trying to raise money at the same time. correct?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Now, see, I can donate, I just can't associate.
Some of that dark money.
There you go, there you
I'm sorry.
Thank you. I'll talk to you soon. I've got your email.
Very good.
Yeah, no, yeah, we're in the process. I was just talking to Pat and Natalie about the things that we're doing. We've been doing
really hard to find stuff.
for all the last 2 years.
Everywhere.
I finally got a teacher for all the trail that can take what I'm doing and run with it. Now this year I'm going to be able to desert vista and work with their teachers too. Our major focus is to our vision statement is to honor God by providing opportunity and resources for the children of our world to change the culture. So what that means is we give them knowledge, resources to build their business, to have conversation, and to change the culture. The culture is defined as culture is defined culture is communication.
She wasn't here.
It's that's such a long kids understand they can change from where they're at now and for real
So people talk about, very much, I've been inside communities that were the grade school where the kids don't wear shoes. You know, they don't know where their next meal are coming from, but they're the happiest kids in the world. At the school district, they run around and play and they have no idea they're you know, because it's really a relative term in relation to
When we went there and before we get back, my truck, up there and back, I went there.
I grew up in an area where I grew up. My mom never allowed us to do that. You know, and that's what we gotta get back to. Because Oregon, Paradise Valley is different than Oregon.
Right now, it's got diamond engine.
Which is different than Central
Every one of our
Mason
buses has it.
or Central Beach.
Or replaced it.
Wherever we're
Right now, I'm dealing here. We have another one that just went down.
some of the happiest people I know sleep on concrete.
And I said, there, Allison. And she was
No, I know. So what we're trying to do is just to teach the kids it's okay to think out of the box.
So, do we want to keep talking about that?
So that's the
Right
thing.
now, I'm not happy with the transactions whatsoever. We're supposed to be great.
Have you seen the brochure?
No, on your website.
Oh, okay.
And when you have a supervisor that overserviced it, did more than
20
he was
years
supposed to
ago.
do,
20 years
still
ago.
fall apart?
20 years ago, we've been starting building it. Got it.
So,
I was here for 20 years. There you go. Slowly building it.
it's not, you know, I'm really upset with it. Right now, just since we've talked.
But the most important thing is you've got
Since the very last time.
and I'm willing to step up.
So, this week, we took out the transmission from 46, put it in 51.
Because one of the things, you know, on the city council, one of the things, five
We're taking the one
things
that was
that I.
in 51 that is broken,
I want to
brought it up to transmission shop, and rebuilt it.
There's so many.
That's
parts
just
in our
trail
community.
And there's different types too, that you gotta go to different lists to find
But
out.
I want you
we
guys to
gotta get,
build all those.
we gotta get all of our nonprofits
Have
to
to do a really good job.
instead of competing.
Genesis Project is a great start, but I think that there's a whole lot out there that
They're
are
behind it
just.
100%.
Well, but there's a lot of them out there that are trying, that
So
do
if
the
you
same
hook
things
us up,
that
because we have 3 other proposals.
the same for the resources and for
Any numbers,
the people they're serving.
it has to
We gotta
be,
get it so that they collaborate.
it has to be
and combine their resources, combine their funding,
If you do that,
and
have
it's
enough.
to serve those
We'll have one
people.
backup.
So
more professional.
I really think that people don't understand how many, or know what's in our
In our community and then just outside of it.
Right.
That have already done it, so we don't have to recreate it.
That's awesome.
I met a fella again last week, his name is Justin, he does a homeless, feeding the homeless in Central. And he takes no paper, he just goes out and does it, and we're bringing him to talk to Gail, Johnson, community development. To talk to them about how he did it, and his group did it, but he sure did it. And so they'll bring his concepts and his knowledge and wisdom to
So I look at the expense here that we're going to spend on this part, and I go, so we need to get the information out. Or we're going to blow, the 60 or 80 grand for spending these. That's important to me, that it's not a waste of it. So to me, it's like there's groups that do this. Maybe each one of them does. But what's the participation doing? I mean, you get group community leaders together and you just talk and do newspaper articles. To me, that's. I don't know what you're doing.
No, it's going out and visiting all the different groups in town.
So just have a list of do we have who's vote? Because and those are the doors.
Yeah, in fact, we do, we have those, that we can gather as to who has voted in the last 3 elections. And say what they voted, so we will know if they voted in the last 3 elections, and you can focus on your attention.
So to me, the other piece of this puzzle is I sat down with a notepad over at CAC and signed people up, registered people. And then I asked them, I'm be apolitical, I don't care whether it's what you do, you got to vote. Whether you're for or against it, you got to vote.
But education.
Well, and here's what
I left here last time.
Yeah.
that's kind of my thought process. Nothing costs nothing, you sit down, you do it in teams. I mean, but just CAC, any place you can sit down.
Out here, we're struggling.
Well, that's kind of rude.
You bring your own shade. You get done with the day of champagne and you've been drinking all day.
Customers are coming in.
Because you sweat. And just let you go, what happened to me?
We're struggling just like bus drivers.
Oh, we're out shoes too. No, but the biggest thing that we got to get across to this is that the 60 million, if we use 60, it's hard, whatever it is, but we've got to get,
because we're training all the bus drivers and they're coming here.
Cabby and Joe, we gotta get the fire department, we gotta get those guys on board. Because it's not just about the school district. If people come in on Ironwood and they see that the high school and the school district is in good shape, that shines well for the city.
It does.
And so the city has got to, if we've got to get the economic development going, so that we can get more families in town, so that we're building the school district. We gotta get the school district to build so that 15 more families can want to come. So it's a big, it's just a whole, a lot of stuff.
Put the lipstick on the pig, we got a retention basin over here, maybe just by the state.
And that's part of the problem.
But we can take care of the one on the district side.
Right.
But there's another piece in front of it.
That's
city.
Yeah, city.
Everybody's sitting there saying, we don't want to pay more.
CVS, I'm sure we can motivate them.
Even if we don't.
See, that's just for the city council.
Motivating homeowners.
So now I have to
Yes.
do it.
I mean, I just went through 2 years of this.
Instance, if we just go ahead and pay just a little bit more for it, we retain those people. We have to
Motivating
keep
homeowners.
It does. I'm like,
It's challenging.
so the money is still there. I mean, you guys don't understand. It's over. It's gonna help dramatically.
State prison
It's
say,
the
hey,
same saying,
let's
state's
get
money to make money. Those people who have no
We got
resources
resources to do that, but it's, we can't go price money.
You know what I'm saying?
We go on public land.
well, that across from the high school, that's not, it's private land, it's a.
I said,
Yeah.
I mean, a couple of them.
Well, no, it's private land.
I mean, not sitting on that interview. I said, I got my own stuff.
So you guys.
So we were talking about one, and she was asking, I said, well,
With the gut county,
she
don't
was
do
saying
so much.
she doesn't feel like they're gonna.
So the real deal is,
You can't do this.
the voice of the people. If you get enough people
Because
calling
they're the type that's.
or writing letters, you know, I'm still,
This is what you want me to
I
do?
still believe in the
You
power.
want me to do this?
I really do.
I'm doing this.
Yeah. If you take time and then writing, they take time to read it. They say,
Yeah, I'm the type that hates it, takes the
If
bull
you
by
give
the
them the
horns,
right
and I'm ready to go.
the people will.
And I'm like,
And the thing about it is.
no, I can understand that, if you're gonna come in as a.
And then the other part of that puzzle is you have to show up.
Processes that we
I went
have,
down to
and you wanna
facility
change
school.
everything before you.
I sat
know
through their
anything.
meeting. I looked on this website that they provide. They have a dashboard of the district. I went all through that, to find out what we had. You know, we haven't really did anything, but on that dashboard for almost 10 years. You know, we've done one emergency funding for an air conditioner.
I think we have 6
filed a
right
budget
now.
last year.
What was that one for?
The budget for the facility school board website. You know, and so to me, this is the missing piece. I think that, you know, the one lady is partially correct, but you have to go down, show up to the event, same way the county board of supervisors. Go down, show them your face, shake their hand, hi, I'm the head, I live in Apache Junction, when are you gonna fix my road? Yeah.
Yeah, the alarm's going off at the school. They car lights.
They're in executive
I was
session.
telling Lori, I said, well, we gotta get this done because I think district.
So it should call out the right?
I saw something. I was running around.
LED flash.
Because I was concerned, I almost got all my driving done, and then I left this classroom, so.
I've been in executive session, I can notice.
You could last for a while.
If I don't get it done now,
Great presentation.
Oh, hi. Nice to see you. Thank you.
You made it very clear.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
I'm glad, thank you. That's what my intent was.
Yep.
last questions.
That's fire alarm.
But, yeah, it's, I want to get.
At the high school, it's fire panel overall.
I'm getting everybody in this class and starting.
Okay, gentlemen, pleasure meeting you, pleasure speaking to you. Very good.
Monday, Tuesday.
You out?
Holy, it's not holy.
I gotta spend 4 days with them two. I told Lori, I said, I'm driving just because I want to leave, you guys can Google back.
No, it's great that you guys are on the go, because it's a wonderful conference.
See, I've never been to anything like this, and we were going over it today. And she goes, well, what do you want to be in? I said, I'll be in whatever I want. And then there was 2 of them I wanted to go in because it was first year supervisor or training or something like that. I said, I want to do that one. And then she goes, well, you can't do that one because you're in this one. It's at the same time. I'm like, oh, why would they do that? So, but I think it's going to be
Oh,
fun.
no, you can't. We're not hoping to see.
They're chatting now.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think it's going to be very informational.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I'm just hopefully Ron and I can do that. Are you guys living in America or do you in America? I'm not sure. I mean, I think that's what it is. Or used to be.
All I know is you two are coming with, I'm driving, and John and I go. That's all I know. So, I figured we'll put it in someone's phone and we'll go. And at first she said that we gotta be there by 7. And I'm like, really? So we're going on Sunday? She goes, no, that's Father's Day. I'm like, really? I said, so when are we leaving? She goes, we're going to be here at transportation at 4:30. I said, all right. I said, I'm going to place bets on this. And she said, what do you mean? I said, I'm betting you're not going to be here at 4:30. I bet you're going to be late. And she says, stop it.
And I'm like, no, I'm being serious. And then she found out it was at night. And I'm like, all right, you're happy because you don't have to wake up super early. No, because I'm driving. No, I'll leave. I'll just go. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna tell. I told her. I said, I'm driving. I'll be here. I'll be ready. And we just found this out tonight.
Well, that's good. Yeah, that's good because my gosh, the 7-car would be very.
Yeah, come down here. Well, I wanted to go out there Sunday, but I didn't know it was Thursday. So, I'm like, whatever.
So how many are here?
It should be. I'm hoping it's opposite direction. Because if we hit 202, once we get to the 101, it should be opposite.
Yeah, that's true.
No. And now that we have the, Google, and we don't cheat around. So that makes a big difference. Yeah. So it's gonna be interesting. I can't wait. And they've been telling me that they got caught because of the costume contest and all this stuff.
Really?
And they said, maybe and I found one for you. I said, just because doesn't mean you guys get to dress me up and have fun. I'm not doing it. I am not yet dressed up. I'm not, because it's supposed to be superhero. So I'm not doing it. She was like, come on. Don't be a party. I said, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to do that. So then Cheryl signed us up for Pine Derby. And I'm like, really? I thought this was mandatory for everyone. Well, then Lori was reading it. It said in there you can sign up for it. And Cheryl sent an email saying, I thought you guys would have fun with this. So I sent it over to her. So I've been carving out the Pine Derby and now, yep. So now they're painting it, or I put the first, I made it yellow, carved it all out, now they're decorating it. She's like, we're putting a stop sign on it, put lights on it. I said, no, it's 5 ounces. We're 4.18 ounces without paint. So we're not putting all that stuff on it because stop signs gonna slow it down, drag, lights and all that stuff, that's gonna slow it down. So then I'm doing it. And she's like, oh yes, we are. Okay, fine. Yeah. So, it's gonna be exciting. wanna know is what the approximate, ETA, what kind of vehicle, and the other thing you told me is, what was it about the box?
Hi, how are you doing?
Okay, I'll,
Doing fine, and you headed back in our direction?
You're not being, I can tell.
Okay, so Sally's on the phone with the,
Who are you, and I'll call you straight back.
Jeff is there with the fire department already. Oh, Jeff's ready. Okay, Sally's on the phone with somebody, and apparently they're not thinking of having to, or Jeff is doing all
I'll call you
right
right
there.
All right, bye-bye.
Okay, okay, thank you.
What did she want?
Appreciate it.
Their fire department already.
Oh. We just had our fire inspection last week, and all the keys worked in the lockbox, and Jeff States, what's his last name? Statcher. Jeff Statcher is over there with the fire department already. Oh. So I don't know who you were talking to, but it's taken care of.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
So as I'm up there, my phone is ringing.
Is there Dr. Anderson in the house?
Yeah, look, my daughter got a puppy.
Aw.
So, oh my goodness.
Yes, and that's it. And ours is Fiscal. He'll call them and make sure. He's not what's going on here. He's going out to the district offices and at the high school. Yeah. Yep, I agree. Well, I think I held out long enough.
Yes, officially.
I gotta be here at 5 a.m.
Well, then you better go home. I better go home too. I'd like to get some food.
Yeah, well, we gotta go over someone and they said, Jeff is already out there. He went on vacation for a week and a half because his mom and dad bought him, I guess.
Our understanding is it's taken care of.
Hawaiian cruise or some type of cruise for graduation.
Are you serious?
My name is Sally.
Yeah.
Well, that was quite great.
So he leaves tomorrow. And he'll be back. He'll be gone the rest of this week and next week. He'll be back.
So, the transportation department's going to be out here.
Or stage.
Woody.
Woody and Woody and Woody and little Mo.
Woody's happy. He's like, so no drivers. I said, no, unless you want me to call a whole bunch to have them come down and help do stuff. He goes, no.
Don't they have someone arrested, are they still?
Well, yeah, they have keys.
Oh, okay.
They have keys for that stuff. No extra bus drivers to do bus wash. Stuff that they have them doing. I said, no. I said, what do you never get nothing done? I said, I'm already. I'm sorry, there's a couple of questions that were available. For not good questions.
Yeah.
For the time. But
I'm sorry, you still have to listen to people say something.
yes,
Is that what they're saying?
I
haven't seen those. Is that what's going on?
Needs everything.
Listen, I've been here 2 years before people finally quit saying, well, Brian did it that way. And he was in California, out of sight, out of mind. I can't even imagine what you have to listen to. But I'm not only 2 years into it, I'm not only here, I'm still active in education. It's gotta be a pain in the ass, and I apologize.
Oh, it's not your fault. No, you did a good job and the hard shoes to fill, but, they'll just have to do.
You do better than I do in many areas, so.
I better turn this thing off.
Rearrange it, everything.
Bye.